Harmon board, faculty, administration, family, friends, but most importantly, the graduates of 2015. I want to commend you and congratulate you here at Legacy Christian Academy for the work that you have done and for the future that really is so bright for you as you enter into a different era in your life. In fact, when I think about high school graduation, I think of it as being one of the defining moments of our lives. There are certain defining moments that we have. Some we see coming, some are unexpected, but this is one that you see coming, you expect it, and when it gets here, you have a rush of all kinds of feelings, as some are bittersweet and others you're just excited about the next step in your adventure, in your journey with the Lord. If you look up the word define, you find something like this: to explain or identify the nature or essential qualities of something. A defining moment is a critical choice made in critical moments. Those choices show you who you really are, shows others who you are, and it also has a great impact on determining who you will become. You've already made some of those choices related to Legacy Christian Academy and being a graduate here. Not knowing you, I know something about you. I know that faith matters to you. I know that relationships matter to you. I know that you respond to individual attention that your faculty have given to you. These things I know. I know that most of all you, if not all of you, come from caring families. When I think in terms of defining moments for you, I want to address my few remarks from a passage of Scripture in Matthew chapter 14, where our Lord had just fed the 5,000 and He sent His disciples ahead of Him on a boat, you remember, told them to go to the other side and He would meet them after a while. They went on the boat. You recall they were fishermen, a number of them were. They knew about water, but what happened was the winds, as the one translation has it, became contrary or boisterous, came against them. And these seasoned veterans became very afraid. And then when Jesus came in the fourth watch of the night, sometime between 3 and 6 in the morning, they thought they saw a ghost. Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take courage, do not be afraid, it is I." And you'll recall what happened next. Peter said, "Lord, if that's you, command me, incite me, invite me to come to where you are." And you remember Jesus said, "Come, come." And for that moment, Peter walked on water until he saw what was taking place around him and the spray of the water and the wind and those kinds of things. And when he took his eyes off the Lord and began to see what we would have said, look, nobody can walk on water, he began to sink. And Jesus immediately picked him up, and they were in the boat, and the wind and the wave became still again. Choices that we make and the way that we see life. When you hear the story of Peter in this particular incident, you think of him as one who didn't show enough faith. And maybe that's the case. Have you ever thought about the fact that he's the only one that got out of the boat? And maybe he did that because he thought the safest place to be was where Jesus was. Out of the boat, on the water, if that's where Jesus is. So what do we think about tonight? What do we know about your life and the things that can take place? You've made decisions already. Faith is important. That's something that will go with you whatever critical moments, times come your way, whether they be good, whether they be challenging, whether you're successful or sometimes you fail. So here's what I want you to remember in these thoughts. Jesus is always there. Whether you see Him, feel Him, or at times even hear Him, He's always there. He's always there. When we look at what was happening with Peter, he saw Jesus, and for that moment he trusted that he too, because of Jesus, could walk upon that water. But then he experienced what we all experience at times, what G. Campbell Morgan talked about as the assault on our senses. There are a lot of people that stand ready in your life to make an assault on different things about you, even your senses. A man or woman can't do that. Who do you think you are? If anybody could accomplish that, they would have done it already. Oh, you'll see it different when you get older. You have youthful exuberance, but life's experience will take some of that out of you. Well, I'm here to say to you, never lose your dream. Embrace it, do what you can to enable it, and cling to it. Not only as a high school graduate, but wherever your path takes you from this point on. As long as God gives you life, continue to dream and to believe that you can make a difference, and know that Jesus is always there. A second thing I see is that He gives us opportunities to go where we've never gone before and to do what we've never done. Peter says, Jesus, if that's you, incite me, invite me, command me to come. And Peter did what nobody else had done. A human foot, flesh, for that moment, walked upon water. Jesus has a plan for you. And I know that you might think, well, if I were like Peter and had the faith of Peter, or even looking at your class, you know, if I had the smarts that some in the class have, or if I were able to stand before people, or if I was able to sing, or if I was able to draw, or whatever it might be, if I could do some things that my classmates do, I think I really could make a difference in life and in the lives of others. Well, here's the good news. The Lord didn't make you like anybody else, but He made only one of you, which means He has a plan for somebody just like you. And you're the only one that can fulfill the plan that He has for you. He'll invite you to go places you've not been and do things that you've never done. A third thing I see, He'll not only save us, and I love the fact of what you've said tonight and what's obvious about this Christian school, but He'll not only save you, but He'll sustain you. Max Lucado tells about a childhood friend in West Texas. Becky and I had the privilege of living in West Texas and Midland for some time, serving a church there. When storms come, you can see them coming for a long way off in that part of the state. He lived in a place where a tornado was coming. The father of the home got his family safe, and the tornado was a distance away, so he kind of watched it coming, see what path it was taking. Not what meteorologists would encourage any of us to do. In just a little while, this friend of Lucado's, a boy at the time, escaped from his mom and ran to where his father was and wrapped his little arms around the legs of his father. When he was asked why about that, and as he reflected on it across the years, he said, I determined that the safest place to be in a storm is where my dad was. And so he went to where his dad was. So what do we know? Jesus is always there. He'll take you where you've never been, help you to do what you've never done. And He not only saves you, but He will sustain you. He will always be there. Each year at Ouachita, we have what's called the Gold Tigers Day. That's the day where we honor the class who graduated from Ouachita 50 years ago. So this year the class of 65 was honored, but beyond that, anybody who graduates 50 years or more ago is invited to that special day, and we have hundreds who will come to be a part of reminiscing and thinking about their years. 2 years ago, the class of 63 was honored, and a woman by the name of Mary Wiley came back to campus. She came back on Amtrak, which means she arrived in Arkadelphia, Arkansas about 4:30 in the morning. Two of our great young women, difference makers, students at the time, picked her up, but before she would let them take her to her hotel room, she wanted to go to campus. She had not been in years and years. And they drove through campus, and she looked around campus. I found it interesting the next day that Mary was one of 2 or 3 from the class of 63 chosen to speak. Now, Mary gets attention, and maybe at first it's not for the best reasons. Mary is very, very small, very, very short. In fact, to speak to her class from a podium such as this, they had to put a chair next to it. She climbed up on the chair so that she could see over it. She could see her class, and they could see her. Mary had just retired from a wonderful career of being a teacher. She had taught for many years, and even in retirement now, she would teach reading 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, because just as these, she was called, had a calling of God to be a teacher, to invest in the lives, I think, in her particular situation of children. She was a very great speaker, humorous, inspirational, encouraging. But as she began to get to the end of her talk, she told something that, though 50 years had passed, I could tell was still somewhat painful to her, and it was a story that I suppose I'll remember always. She wanted to be a teacher. She was in her student teaching days. And someone 50 years ago, she didn't say whether it was an administrator or one of her professors, pulled her aside. Here she is about to complete college, student teaching, and began to talk to her about other careers that she might consider. She said there was one common theme of the different things that were mentioned. She would not be around people to do any of those. And she knew what the person seemed to be saying to her. You're so small, you're so short, your stature calls attention, and people may not take you seriously as a teacher. To which this young woman then, older woman now, with great conviction of heart said, I didn't come to Ouachita to do that. I came to prepare to be the best teacher that students will ever have. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what she did. Now, what does that story say to you and me? You may have it all going for you right now, but there's still that same kind of courage, that same kind of conviction. There are always going to be voices that try to steer you a particular way, but there's one voice that you need to be familiar with, that you need to hear above all others, and that's the one that said to Peter, come on. You want to do something different in life? Come on. Remember that the Lord has a plan for you, only you, each one of you. And if you'll follow it, you'll make a difference in the lives that you touch. And the wonderful thing about being a part of this great school is that you've been trained to know that in your life, you have the privilege and the opportunity not only to touch lives, but to touch eternity. I challenge you to make that your goal and your lifelong pursuit. Congratulations, 2015 graduates of Legacy Christian Academy.